Is that why there's this collective consensus of lack on our planet?
Well, that's a sort of natural byproduct. We do not believe that there is a consensus of lack, because no one resonates with lack when you focus upon it. But because you have tended to become more action-oriented than leaning toward your vibrational nature, you do tend to offer the majority of your action from a perspective of lack. But don't worry about it, because there's not really very much creating that is effective from a place of disconnection. Now, that's really worth talking about, because these last two statements that you made make it sound like things are going wrong or that you are slipping back. And we brought it forth by what we said about you're sort of losing your awareness of your connection. But not to worry, because everything that you live causes a launching of a rocket, and that is the stream that Source gives its undivided attention to. And that is the point of attraction that law of attraction is most dominantly responding to. That's why the current, the stream of life is so strong. So we could say to you, it will never happen, but just to set your mind at ease about this, every human on the planet could find something, even the same thing, that you were worried about and using as your excuse to not line up with source energy, and your planet would still thrive, because those energies are set forth from that broader non-physical perspective. You cannot mess up this world. You cannot cause a disaster of this world. Man's worry about that is just an exaggerated version of losing his connection with who he is. Anytime you hear someone speaking of gloom and doom, it is always from their place of not understanding who they really are. You just cannot see your world through the eyes of Source and worry at the same time. And if you're worrying, you're not seeing your world through the eyes of Source, but your world is being created through the eyes of Source. Do you get that? Do you get that in terms of what we've been talking about here in this forum? That the contrast causes you, leading edge genius creators, to give birth to your ideas of improvement, and it's those ideas of improvement the source energy is becoming. And it is from that vantage point that the new is coming forth. In other words, you are not creating the negative stuff from this physical environment. You are depriving yourself of the positive stuff in this physical environment. Do you see how that works? There's not, humans would like to tell the story that in the same way that we tell the story that you are launching rockets of desire, and that this wonderful rocket of desire is launched, and that source energy rides that rocket of desire. There are many religions that are actually telling a similar story that is absolutely bogus, as they say, oh yes, the contrast gives birth to what you don't want, and there is a demon energy that rides that rocket of what you do not want, and now there is a war against the good energy and the bad energy, and one or the other is going to triumph, and which side are you going to be on? And we say, give us a break. You cannot cease to be the pure positive energy beings that you are. When you croak, oh how we love that disrespectful word. When you croak, you will reemerge into pure positive energy, and you will leave behind all of that disconnected energy. So there is not anything to worry about, and there is only one thing to consider. What am I doing right here, right now, with my thoughts relative to the vibration of who I really am, of the source within me? And in every moment you can feel that. That's why little ones come forth eager to smile and eager to be nice. It's so easy to be nice when you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and it's impossible to be nice when you're not. If you ever catch someone in a moment of not being nice, they're not tuned in, tapped in, turned on. They're out there raw and ragged. They're separated from who they really are, having a moment in time of separation. Too strong of word, but you get the point.
Abraham, many teachers are talking about this light body transformation that we're going towards.
We're talking about it too. We're talking about a gap. That's all it is. Okay. Here's the light body. This is who you are. The better you feel, the more in alignment with it you are. The worse you feel, the more you are not.
Well, is it true that our DNA was disconnected from us and we're down to 2 strands, and that there's a way to get more connected, or to connect what's called our meridians to the grid, or the axitonial lines to the whole cosmic connection? Is that important?
Oh, whatever floats your cork. In other words, it would be wrong and illogical for us to say someone has found a story that helps them turn downstream, and for us to say, wrong story. And so some of that's what's going on. In other words, what happens with most humans, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, and we are trying to help you to find the basis of who you really are. But there is a very strong pattern that goes like this. Here's where I stand, and I'm not very happy about where it is. So now I need to explain why I'm in this unhappy place. So the stories that you have conjured have been truly remarkable. Truly remarkable. As you explain why you're not where you innately feel that you should be. You conjure things, I must have been bad in a past life. Or the most common one is, you're not keeping the rules that I've set out for you, so of course you're not going to thrive. You need to keep my rules in order to thrive. And the thing that got screwy about that is, so many of those that have set the rules into place aren't keeping their own rules and aren't thriving either. In other words, that's where you start questioning. You say, wait a minute, you said if I keep those rules, I would thrive, and if I don't, I won't. But so I kept the rules and I'm not thriving, and they're not keeping them and they are thriving. There's something screwy in this. And so that's why so many people are questioning so many things, because they've been outside of their own guidance so much. So the stories that you tell range from some God that, in other words, think about, this is a logical story, isn't it? Feel the logic of this story. It's totally bogus, but feel the logic of it. So I want to be good, and that person or that organization told me what I needed to do to be good. So I followed it to a letter. I struggled, I suffered, I was determined. I did things I didn't feel like doing. I deprived myself of a lot of things that I wanted to do. I kept the rules, but I'm still not thriving. My prayers are not being answered. So what's the logical answer to that? If you start with a premise that you believe, which is, I need to do those things to be good, and I did all of those things to my best capability in order to be good, but my prayers are not being answered, then you have to tell another story. Well, you're not keeping them exactly the way you should have. And God has a higher standard, and apparently you are not keeping the standard. So you need to try harder, because when you do it right, you will be blessed. And until then, you won't be blessed. And so out of that false premise comes a whole lot of people that decide that they are unworthy. Jerry and Esther have a dear friend who is a minister of a church, and he said for years he prayed to God, but God always seemed to be out to lunch when he called, because he prayed and prayed and prayed, and his prayers were not answered. And so if someone would explain that you can't be focused upon the absence of what you want and get what you're asking for, his prayer was out of whack. The vibration of it was out of whack. It wasn't that his worthiness was out of whack. The vibration of his being was disallowing his receiving of what he was asking for. But if you don't know that, then you conjure all kinds of logical seeming things from your false premise. So from the false premise that we are unworthy beings and that we're here to prove some sort of worthiness, and we are trying to live by some sort of standards that are outside of ourselves, there are all kinds of remarkable stories that are being told. They just make it up as they go along. But when you find the vibrational root of something, and when you are able to apply your thoughts and you discover a consistent law, when you are able to say, this happened to me and I see the match in that thing that's happening and how I was thinking, and more important, how I was feeling, now all of those false premises go away. Now you understand who you are. Now you begin to feel worthy, because now you can adjust your vibration and get into the flow of the remarkable, well-being, abundant stream. In other words, we can understand how when you feel wonderful, sometimes Jerry and Esther will be in such a mode of appreciation that they just feel all of the resources of the universe just rippling through them. And it is a feeling of such blessedness. In other words, Esther will just smile as she shivers with her knowing that well-being and source is flowing through her. And it's so nice to know that there's not some arbitrary decision about whether she's being blessed or not. It's so nice to be in control of your own alignment with Source, you see. And when you're not in alignment with Source consciously, then you got to pretty much explain why things aren't turning out the way you thought they would. And that sounds like one of those stories to us.
So my last question, which is a little silly, but it's something that's inside of me, is how can I become closer to Abraham or raise my own vibration other than what you've said about meditating or just asking?
Well, meditation is a really good tool, because no matter where you are on the emotional scale, when you quiet your mind, you'll go higher. In other words, when you do your best to quiet your mind, you stop resistance and your vibration raises. And so it's easier to teach you to have no thought than to jump from where you are into pure positive thought. So we would use meditation as a soother and as an aligner and as a resting place. We would use it as a tuner-upper. In other words, meditation is a wonderful tool. But once you are hanging out more regularly with the low side of your emotions in frustration, let's say, and the high side up there in appreciation, we would use the tools of appreciation and positive aspects as your method to tune yourself up. So many people, especially those like you who are consciously, spiritually oriented, you want mystical methods, you want chanting, you want affirmations, you want beating of drums, and all of those things are wonderful because they are all meditative in nature. They cause you to focus outside your normal focus, and in doing so, they tune you to a higher vibration. But we like to say to you, if you all knew how much you wanted to be in these bodies, you would not all the time be trying to get out of them. So when you are fully conscious and looking for things to appreciate, Esther, as she was getting ready today, she got on a rampage of appreciation about Jerry. She was thinking about how right from the beginning of her meeting him, how he was uplifting to her. She used to say, I got happy just driving past his house. Recently, they met a man who had known Jerry 30 years ago, who had been close to him for about a year or so, really close to him. And during that time, Jerry had cast his gaze upon this man in such a way that this man, who was a very young man at the time, who did not have much faith or belief in himself, discovered belief in himself as it was reflected through the eyes of Jerry. And so Esther started there, and then she went down this long list of things that he adds to her experience in the beginning and every day up until now. And by the time she had finished using him, he's easy, as her excuse to tune into pure positive energy, she was soaring. She was remembering who she is, you see. And we want you to realize that there is so much that is around you that has that potential. There is so much beauty. An experience like this, just stand and look from the deck of the ship off into this world of well-being. Look into the sky at night. Listen to the sound of well-being that surrounds you. There are so many things in your environment that if you care about how you feel, you can use to tune yourself into alignment with who you are.
Okay.
Esther has begun playing a game just recently because there are several things that they are about where they are tuning, they're wanting to project the idea of seeing this world through the eyes of Source. As people are worried about terrorism and worried about global warming and looking for things around the planet to use as your excuse not to align with Source, they are feeling ravenous to find those things that do make you feel an alignment with Source and put a spotlight on them and highlight them. And so those words have been ringing through Esther's head, and we think that they would be very good for you too. And it's exactly what your question was. You said, how could I get closer to Abraham? And the answer to that is, ask yourself the question, I wonder how Abraham feels about this. When someone complains about what someone is doing, Esther has begun saying, I wonder how Abraham feels about that person. And it's shocking to her because immediately, because of Esther's easy access to us, when Esther says, I wonder how Abraham feels about such and such, suddenly she feels how Abraham feels about such and such. And then she says to herself laughingly, why do I ever go anywhere without them? For heaven's sakes, I never go anywhere without my American Express card. Why would I go anywhere without Abraham? That's your answer. I want to see the world through the eyes of Source. I want to see this meal through the eyes of Source. I want to see this person through the eyes of Source. I want to see this experience through the eyes of Source. I want to see this president through the eyes of Source. I want to see this current administration through the eyes of Source. I want to see this planet and all that it is through the eyes of Source. How does Source see it? And we got to tell you, when you're seeing it the way Source sees it, you're excited about it. You're happy about it. You're soaring about it. You're sure about it. You're confident about it. You feel good about it. And if you're feeling something like worry or fear, you're not looking through the eyes of Source.
Thank you so much.